Welcome, welcome everybody. My name is Martha Grant. I'm the Director of Product Strategy here at Action Network Action Builder. We're so excited that you're able to join us for our first session here of Build Power 2022. I'm super excited to dig into everything that's happened in the past year on the railroads. And I'm joined today by Johnny Walker, CSX Railroad, Benning Yard, Southeast DC, conductor, union rep, and secretary of the Maryland State Legislative Board for Smart TD. Johnny, to kick us off, tell us where you're at.
Oh, right now I'm at Anacostia Park right here in Washington, D.C. Over here to my right behind us would be the Capitol. And over here to the left is my rail yard, but right behind me is the main line for the Capitol subdivision. And that is one of the major arteries here on the East Coast. So I just got off work a few hours ago and I'm doing our Zoom session.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So to get started, I would love to hear, when did you start working on the railroad? What led you to a career on the rails?
Well, it's not as exciting as it would seem. People ask me all the time, they're like, why did you get a job on the railroad or something like that? And I just literally say I applied. I thought it'd be a neat job. And, that was it. I mean, ever since I was a kid, trains are neat and stuff like that. They're huge. They do all sorts of neat things, but I've never been like, I got to go out of my way to see a train. Now, mind you, if a train passes by or something like that, that's cool. And I'll stop and look, but it's just a job now.
Yeah. And when did you get started?
Well, I got started about 18 years ago. I got the phone call for the interview when my wife was in labor. And I told the interviewer at Amtrak, I said, well, when she's done, I'll come on over. And they're like, no, that's okay. We'll reschedule. And then pretty much from there, I started working. So, yeah, so now I can tell when my 30 years is up by her birthday. So it works out.
Nice. Now, there's been a lot of changes on the railroads over the years. What are some of the big ones that you've seen in your 18-year career?
That's a really complicated question. Within the last 3 years, there has been a lot of cuts. They have brought us down to, I would love to say it's a skeleton crew, but I mean, it's even less than that. We really can't run trains with the people that we have out here. We don't have enough trains or equipment or people to go ahead and run them, to go ahead and service our customers. It's always go, get it done, keep doing it with less, trying to go ahead and make sure that, they're just beating us down through attrition. I mean, this is a horrible, toxic work environment for a lot of us. We're constantly, it's always been said that when you get a job with the railroad, you're going to try really hard to go ahead and get the job to do it. And then throughout your career, you're going to be always trying to keep it because, we always say you're only as good as your last switch, meaning that you've made a mistake or something like that, you're expendable. Well, now more often than not, we have managers constantly micromanaging, jumping out of the bushes, trying to not improve our workplace for safety and try to mentor us, but really just try to go ahead and get us into a program. Once they get us into a program of discipline, we're more likely to break the rules because we don't want to lose our job. So that's one of the big things that we have. There's also we're not hiring people for logistics or for actually running and stuff like that. We're hiring marketing majors. At our Surface Transportation Board hearing, instead of bringing people that would be able to explain exactly why this train didn't do this, and this, we have people with marketing backgrounds. And when I had I sat through the Surface Transportation Board hearings, and I was actually in my marketing class, Marketing 101, and I'm looking at everything that they brought up, and I'm like, this is very parochial. This is not even really that complicated what they're doing. It's all a smoke and mirrors session. And instead of really going down to, this is what's wrong, this is how we're fixing, this is what we're moving it, they're just giving this snake oil sales pitch and not really listening to what the people on the ground are really having to deal with on a daily basis. When I was working at that time, I was on an extra list. The extra list is like an on-call job. However, because for previous times they couldn't keep people at this on-call job, I get paid a stipend to sit at home and be prepared for work. Well, it used to be that every once in a while I'd earn what's called guarantee. And when I earn guarantee, that means, I was ahead of game. I didn't work 5 days or I didn't work all 6 days. But now more often than not, I'm working 6 days a week. I'll go home, rest 10 hours, get called again to be to work in 2 hours. So I'm constantly on the road. Our men and women that are out there are constantly on the road, constantly working. The only break that we get is, if we get injured or get put out of service where we can't work. So, I mean, it's constant, and we're in such a, and I don't want to take away from anyone's abusive relationship, but we're in an abusive relationship with our employers, where at one minute we're all fed up to be like, I'm going to leave this place, forget it, here's my keys, I'm done. And the next minute we get a short call and we're rushing into work to make sure the train gets down the road. And that's no way for anyone to live.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that we're seeing this across many different industries as well. This flexible scheduling where people can't plan their lives around also being able to take home a paycheck. Now, I really do want to get into, I think there's many people on this call who do not have an understanding of like a day in the life of you as a conductor, as a railroad worker, and really just how bad the system has gotten. Would you mind, like, you hinted a little bit at this with that sort of working 6 days, 10 hours off, but can you run through what a day looks like and just how little notice you get to get on the rails?
Oh, no, perfect. That's a great question. So I will always be living and dying by one of these. I will always have a cell phone with me. No matter where I'm at, I have to make sure that I have cell phone coverage. Like I said before, sometimes you may get a day or you may get a few hours to yourself and stuff like that, but that's few and far between now. But everywhere I go, I have to make sure that cell phone's working. If that cell phone's not working, I'll miss my call. If I miss my call, I lose about half a week's worth of my guarantee. So I'm not just missing one day of work. If I don't make up any of that extra time, I lose all that money for the week. So it used to be that we had a caller, a person that would call us up and say, Mr. Walker, you're riding on the L142. You're going to be working with Mr. Moore. Have a safe day. Now we have an automated system. They cut half our callers, at least half our callers out. So I think in the last 2 months, I've spoken to 2 people for my calls, for when they call me up. So I get an automated calling system that says, CSX calling, just in that nails on a chalkboard tone. I love living in DC. These are all the time over my terminal. But so I get this call, and it's a robotic call. So I have to enter in my information, put in my ID number, put in my PIN number. Then they go ahead and say, you're being called to work, job number L1. It takes 5 minutes to get through that call, to call my engineer. My engineer gets that call, and then I get that call. So that's another 5 minutes that I have to go ahead and be stalled for my 2-hour call time to get to the terminal. At CSX, you get a 2-hour call time. I believe at Norfolk Southern, you get a 90-minute call time. That means from the time that you get called, that's when you have to be to work. You have 90 minutes to get to work. So if you live far away from the terminal, if there's rush hour traffic, if there's anything like that, you're already stumbling block. A lot of times we have to say that you got to wear your boots all the time, or you got to sleep in your car, or you got to do something to go ahead and be there. We used to, contractually, we actually have an agreement that says we have to know what trains are available. And if the train is not available and we miss our call, like it wasn't there 4 hours ahead of time, then we're good to go. But they never put our trains down, so we never know who's there. We can go ahead and track a train from Opelika, Florida to Selkirk, New York, but we can't tell when it's 2 hours away from the terminal. You could call up the yardmaster, you could call up the callers and say, where are these things? And then all of a sudden the train drops out of the sky. And we all know trains don't drop out of the sky. We know where they're at. The dispatching system could see it. The signal system could see it. We know exactly where everything is. It's just that they can't plan these things. So after that's all done, and I'm in my car, I'm driving to work, and I finally get there. I pick up my paperwork. I have a job briefing with our engineer and the crew and see what's going on, call up our yardmaster, sending off orders, so that's like another 30 minutes. But they want you out. Well, it used to be, our system was that train needed to be moving within 90 minutes of the start time. Now they want you out the door in 15 minutes. 15 minutes is not appropriate whatsoever to go ahead and perform a job briefing every single time. And the job briefing is, what are we doing? How are we doing it? What can we go ahead and do? Progress the move and all these other things. So they want us out the door even less. Literally, we're rushing around. We're being Then we'll rush out the door, we'll go ahead and do our work, and then we'll sit at a stop signal sometimes for 2-3 hours, meaning that we're just sitting on the train waiting. Now, on our locomotive, we have a chemical toilet that is hardly ever cleaned that we have to sit in front of. Then sometimes when I first started, we were out in the middle of nowhere. I was like, is there this type of restaurant around? And they're like, no, what are you talking about? And that was the chemical toilet. And we were smelling it from the van. That's how bad it was. And it's sitting in the sun. So we're sitting on this locomotive for 4 hours before we even get to start sometimes at the stop signal. And then there's not a refrigerator, at least on our locomotives. There's an ice box that we have to bring our own ice box. We have to bring our own ice, which is provided by the company if they go ahead and refill it, or if the ice machine is working. We sometimes have to deadhead to our train, so maybe we could stop en route to get something to eat out of a bag, but we're not having necessarily home cooked food unless we bring it along with us. There's, and that's just the start. But when they retrofitted all our locomotives to make sure that we had positive train control and all the other stuff, they put cameras on the train. Now the cameras are there for safety. I've never seen a camera stop anyone from doing something unsafe. They're there to take away the liability from the railroad that this person is exhausted behind the locomotive throttle. They're exhausted. And we're sitting at these stop signals for hours at a time. And if we doze off, that's a chargeable offense. We're not doing anything. Granted, they want to go ahead and have the train as soon as that light turns green for us to go. But both of us don't have to sleep. We used to be able to go ahead and catch a nap if we're stepping out a stop signal. We'd have a job briefing. One of us would catch a few Z's and stuff like that. No, they want us to stop at that stop signal and sit at attention. Now, that seems a little bit dramatic where I'm saying sit at attention, but that's what one of my engineers said. We're out here doing this, this, and this. Now, sometimes when I'm switching my train out, it could take upwards of 6 hours where I'm on the ground. And if it's a good day, yeah, I can go ahead and roll with it. But the last week here in DC, it's been raining. It's been cold. I'm tired. I got to climb up and down these cars. I got to switch out 5, 6 passes and stuff like that. And I'm ready to go ahead and go and just keep moving, keep my eyes open. And then I stop. I stop for hours at a time. And that's just part of the normal day. I could go into all the externals where there's sometimes something happens en route and I have to go fix something. So I have to go fix something. Now, my trains are a little bit smaller, but they're trying to make these trains 3 miles long. So if there's a knuckle that's been busted or the train separated 200 cars back, I'm taking 30 minutes just to walk back there to go, oh, I can fix that. And then I have to go ahead and make arrangements for the engineer to either cut away or get another train crew out there so I can go ahead and fix the train. And then they want to get rid of my job. Right now, we're fighting for 2-person crew. And that's something that's going to be an FRA seminar, excuse me. It would be an FRA seminar that they're having for public hearing to see whether or not they want these 3-mile-long ethanol trains running through the Midwest or through your local community where you only have 1 person on the crew. But the railroad will go ahead and say that the technology is there to go ahead and replace us, that we have positive train control, that things are not going to happen, that there is no need for the redundancy of safety. Now, with the positive train control is supposed to be able to, if the engineer makes a mistake, if the engineer is speeding, if the engineer goes past the stop signal or anything like that, the autonomy will go ahead and shut the train down. Well, we know how technology works today. We do. And if I, the more safety you have out here, the less likely something is going to happen. As our company says, we have layers of safety. We have layers of safety to go ahead and protect things. So if I don't do my job, someone else should do their job, and so on and so forth if something screws up. But if you keep taking away those layers of safety and someone doesn't do their job, that layer of safety is gone. And if you didn't do your job, then it's not going to work. There was a movie years ago with William Shatner called The Coast Starlight. It's a ridiculous movie, the ridiculous presence and stuff like that. But it was all about automation and making the signals, all automated. And they said, right in that movie, they said, well, we have all these tower operators to be the secondary safety. Well, we don't have tower operators anymore. And my wife and I, we were laughing at this movie because They said we got these extra safety layers, but once they find out that the safety works, so to speak, they'll get rid of the other safety layer because it costs too much. So this is what we're constantly fighting. And, I live in this community. I don't want one person on the train crew who's fatigued, who has 10 hours of rest. And 10 hours of rest means a break in service. It doesn't mean literally, if we were able to be vampires and get stuck in a closet and go back to work, awesome. That would be great. That would work out, but we can't. I get off of work. I have to drive home. I only live 30 minutes from the terminal, but some of our conductors and engineers live 2-3 hours away from the terminal. So they're spending a large portion of time in the car. And, you have to go home, you have to change, you got to wind down. Maybe you got to get something to eat. You go get into bed, and maybe if you're lucky, you get 6 hours of sleep. And then there's the phone rings, CSX calling, and you're rolling back out again. And these CEOs in Wall Street think that that's okay. It took a major disaster in California for us to stop using our cell phones at work for people text messaging and stuff like that. It took a major disaster. What is it going to take here for us to go ahead and be able to get a quality of life, be able to get sick days, be able to be taken care of? And this is what we're constantly fighting. And when you say something, they try to push it off as it's, we'll think about it, or that really has nothing to do with safety. McDonald's tried to automate its workforce, and we see how that's working, that they still need workers out there. So just imagine if they all of a sudden said on the railroad, we could start automating things. You're complaining that we're not going to come to work because of a strike. And you think that just automating things all of a sudden, you'll make it work because you'll make it work on paper. But in reality, it's not going to work.
Absolutely. Yeah, I find this particularly horrifying. So I grew up and my dad lives in a house just a couple blocks away from one of the main rail lines that's used to transport Canadian crude oil. And just the idea of an accident happening on the line. I mean, I think people don't recognize how horrific these train accidents can be for communities, for like the whole country. It's really awful, the safety, the risk these companies are taking with everyone's safety, not just the safety of conductors, train crews, everybody who works on the rail line. Like this is an issue that we all need to care deeply about. I really appreciate how you've highlighted all of the safety concerns that are currently present, and especially these safety concerns with the way automation is going. I mean, we've all read plenty of articles about Tesla cars crashing. Like, automation is not to be relied upon. I want to hear a little bit more about how it has gotten worse. Like, how have these safety concerns grown, especially in the last 3 to 5 years? You've been on the line for 18 years. What has gotten really, like, what are, how used it, like, how was it before? And what, you talked a little bit about two-man crews. What more is needed to get to the level of safety that is decent and good and right?
Well, the first thing, and this goes for a lot of things, there is no set metric for the railroads to record any of their instances. There are certain things that they have to record through the FRA, but there is no set metric for on-time performance or delivering things to the customer or instances with the positive train control failing. So what will happen is, one of the instances I had here, if anyone is familiar with the DC area, I'm here in Southeast DC, and we ran from Southeast DC to Rockville, Maryland, which is about 14 to 20 miles outside of DC, depending on which way you go. So anyway, as the train goes by. Anyway, so what happened was we entering all our information into positive train control, and there was one clerical error in there. Our train had no axles, meaning that our train cannot, if we had no axles, the train couldn't work. But we went all the way from Washington, D.C. to Rockville, Maryland, before the positive train control caught that and put us into emergency. And it was a human error on our part because we didn't have it, but it was also a programming error because it allowed us to leave the terminal with this device that's supposed to fix everything. And so you have that going on. But the other thing is, if my engineer, he's watching down the tracks, he's moving back and forth with the throttles and the braking controls and all the other stuff. He's got two computer screens with all the locomotive information. He's got a positive train control speed. He's like flying an airplane. So you want to take me out of the mix to go ahead and have this guy watch ahead of you, go ahead and do this, this, and this, and all this stuff. So the positive train control goes down. And when the positive train control goes down, he or she can't see what the problem was ahead of time. When you have another set of eyes, it's like something went down, you can look at that. And I've done that several times for our positive train control when it has gone down, where I've been able to actually report the incident and hopefully they fixed it. But if you have someone that's watching 3, 4 different screens plus the track, plus paying attention to all their, they can't do it. You know, they want to claim layers of safety. They want to do this other stuff, but then they say, we want to take away the repetitiveness of safety. Why would you want to take away something that's safe, something that has been there? Our train crews started out with 5 crew members years and years ago, but with the radio, with all the technological advances, now you have 2. Now you want to put it down to 1. Our metro train that was here in the DC area that had that terrible accident was run on something that was similar to positive train control, something to an autonomous thing. And the only thing that saved the more lives was that engineer, that operator was new to the job and they were paying extra attention. Most people, when the automation comes through, they figure that something else is going to go ahead and take care of it. It always works until it doesn't. And then it's going to take something major like the metro incident here in the DC area for people to go ahead and say, we need to do something. And now they're trying to go back to an automated system through metro. And everything's been, it's better now. And all it was maintenance was being pencil whipped with managers that were encouraging this because just the way they treated their employees. We want to have a safe train. We want to safely run through this community. Most of us live in the area that we go through. So why would we want to do something to go ahead and have an incident like Quebec? In Quebec, they had one of those crude oil disasters. It wiped out the town. And that was a 1-person crew where they, on a shoreline railroad where they are cutting costs, that they have 1 crew member. And the town was wiped out. And we don't learn from that. No, it won't happen here because we do things a little bit differently. Do we?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, these safety issues really can't be downplayed. I want to pivot for a little bit and talk about the incredible work that SMART and you and your fellow members are doing to push back on this. But before we get there, would you talk a little bit about what the union has meant to you? Tell us about your journey within the union.
I grew up in poverty. I always say I grew up below the gutter. We didn't have much money, but I remember Christmas Day when the Jack Nicholson movie came out and it was the movie Hoffa. My dad took me to see Hoffa. I was probably just shy of a teenager or whatnot. And my dad, he's 6'4" and he's built like a house and stuff like that, has a deeper voice than I am. But I watched that movie. We saw it Christmas Day, the opening day. And I was just amazed at what one person can do. Now, granted, it's a movie and you build things up, but I mean, really, truly, one person was able to do a lot of things. And as we left that theater, still smell the smells of popcorn. I could still picture the carpet, the brown color, the yellow lights and stuff like that. And the people in front of us said they made him out to be a hero. And my dad said, without missing a beat, in a deeper voice than mine, he was a hero. And they started picking up their step and getting out of the theater a lot quicker. And from that moment on, I didn't know it really at the time, but that's what I wanted to do. I want to be a labor leader. I want to be someone that stands up for people that can't stand up. I'm tired of being bullied around. I'm tired of not being able to stand up for myself and all these other things. I'm just doing what's right. And that's what we all should do. We should, when one of our coworkers is getting hurt or something's happening to them, we need to stand up and say no more. When one's taking a stand, we all got to take a stand, and that's what the important thing is,
Yeah, absolutely. So 18 years ago, you became a railroad worker, signed your dues card the same day.
Yes, ma'am.
And tell us about your journey with SMART. You are now a union rep. You are a leader within your local, you're a leader in Maryland. Tell us about your journey within the union, how you're realizing your dream of being that labor leader.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of attrition. There's a lot of help that needs to be needed in all unions and stuff like that, where, you have an older group that's willing to go ahead and do things, and you have a younger group that might be disenchanted or ready to go ahead and change things. My union is no different. There at our local, there's usually always a position open because, people just don't want to take the time or whatever. So I've been a union representative for, was it three unions before I came to Smart, and a position was opened, and through attrition, through acclamation, that was it, and I've been going from there. But the real thing that got the fire underneath me was being elected delegate. And when I was elected delegate, I got to change our constitution, and that was awesome. We had a motion on the floor where they said X, Y, and Z. And later that day, one of our yardmaster brothers, who actually is a brother to us here in the Baltimore area, said, "Hey, we're always, kind of left out of the crew. We kind of are the crew." And instead of it being a teaching moment, they kind of were like, "Yeah, okay, all right, thanks." And they put it on the record. Well, I got to lunch and I'm like, that doesn't sit right with me. So very sheepishly, I just got up there and I said, "Look, called for a point of order." And I said, I do not want to open up the last amendment. I just want to add some verbiage to it. I believe that my brother here from Baltimore had a very good point. And these extra words are really not going to change anything. I just want to add that to it. And it passed. I was really proud of myself. I was like, man, this little sheepish kid from Baltimore, I changed our constitution. I didn't do it just once that time. I did it twice. And I just wouldn't sit down when something wasn't right. I just kept standing up. And after a while, I'm a loud person and stuff like that. Someone sneezed in our hall, and I said, "Bless you," as loud as I could, so they could hear it on the other hall. And they're like, "Yeah, God bless you, Johnny Walker." They all shouted out. I mean, it was a good time, and I was making a difference. I'm still making a difference. And whatever I could do for our union, I mean, there's nothing else that I want to do. I mean, I stay here at this miserable job because if I'm taken out of the labor struggle, other people are going to struggle, and they're going to have to go ahead and take me off the property or turn the lights out. And that's basically it.
Yeah. So let's talk about this past year. The contract, the struggle to get a good contract. What were the issues at stake? What were the safety is obviously number one, but let's talk about like the details. What were you all fighting for over the past year?
Well, and I don't want to say that, I'll tone this down a little bit. We're basically fighting for the next step within all our progressive contractual bargaining unit. We want pay raises, we want healthcare, we want equality of life, we want other things. Now, I can get off into the weeds with all the things that go on with pool turns and other things that would just kind of like, they're important to us, but trying to explain it, there's just not the time here. But truly, with this contract agreement, it took 3 years. 3 years to get the bare minimum, and our unions fought tooth and nail. And anyone that is listening to it, and when it gets onto YouTube, I will point them out to this. I'm like, everyone that says that our union didn't do anything or our unions didn't do anything, no, they absolutely did the right thing. They did, well, I wouldn't even say the right thing. They did the thing to go ahead and get us the best thing that we can get. And the best thing that we can get was the bare minimum. And that took governmental insight. They did not give us what we deserved as any bargaining unit. Most people that have taken any negotiation course or have negotiated before, 3% is usually the bare minimum that you should settle for, because that is historically basically the cost of living increases. That's it. Our company came to us, the carriers came to us with a 1% to 2% raise, and we're raising our healthcare, get rid of the conductor. See you in 3 years. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in between, but basically see you in 3 years when the government has to get involved to get the bare minimum. The bare minimum. And it was more than just sick days. It kind of, the media and our unions and the other things like that, and our supporting coalition unions kind of took that because it's a quality of life issue. This is an all right contract, but it sets a bad precedent for us to go ahead and accept this contract after 3 years. because that means they could wait another 3 years for the next contract. Our next agreement will be happening in 2 years where we get to start negotiating again because we're still into this agreement that we're just ratified with 3 years in. So this sets a bad precedent, and it's okay. And anyone knows that past precedent sets the tone. And, you know, like they say, give an inch, take a mile. Well, if we give an inch, the railroad will take as many miles as they can. And the media, for the last 3 years and with COVID, with everyone leaving the job, getting let go from the job or whatever, or just gone, instead of going, what do we need to do different? This young lady here, Miss Katie Farmer, who was named Railroader of the Year, and I have yet to see her actually work out here. I don't work for BNSF, but every one of my BNSF brothers and sisters have said they have hardly ever seen her actually out in the field, no less actually working our job out in the cold with our short calls, with our living, you know, out of a bag. We've not seen this person. This person helped create a draconian attendance policy, an attendance policy that during the Surface Transportation Board hearings, one of the members brought up marginalized people, people of color, and women working on the railroad. And they were talking about what does the railroad do to go ahead and promote this. And our speakers and our members said, this woman right here has helped create a policy where a single mother who in the past policy was able to find childcare and still be within the bubble, but still have her job, was in the process of getting fired. But Katie Farmer, through Railway Age, which is a industry publication that they encourage all the railroads to go ahead and subscribe to and put it in our crew rooms and have it out there, they put this woman up as Railroader of the Year, who's helping accentuate the process to get our single mothers fired, people that are choosing healthcare or their families to survive, to go ahead and live their lives, and they're making her Railroader of the Year. That's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for that type of quality of life. When Wall Street executives are having our CEOs get a 20 million, my CEO, the former CEO Foote, got $20 million. $20 million. And sometimes I can't even get ear protection or water or an ice machine that works. I had raw sewage flowing out of our bathrooms at our terminal for over 60 days. It took me to call our local OSHA to get it fixed within 24 hours. But we're naming people like this Railroader of the Year. And that's just despicable. I have been a railroader for 18 years now, both in passenger and freight. I have done my service. I'm doing a job that I love. And all I can do now is die for the economy. And that's the way the government sees it, is that I can die for the economy just like everybody else. I have had an upper respiratory infection since Thanksgiving, but I still go to work because I love my job and I want to service my customers. And I say I love my job. I love what I do, not the people I work for. And again, this is concerted activity if they try to fire me, and I'm whistleblowing. So just putting that out there.
Yes. I want to talk about that high vis attendance policy. It is the high vis attendance policy that you're talking about. Truly horrifying. Can you just quickly talk us through that high vis attendance policy and what that has meant?
Well, I can tell you what our policy is because we've had ours a little bit longer. I cannot fully attest to what BNSF has, but it is quite bad. So if I take today off, and today being Thursday, I get X number of days, X number of points that I have to go ahead and work off. So most of the time, if I take one day off, it takes me 2 months to go ahead and get back into the positive. I can't carry positive points. I can't work them off any faster if I work double or anything like that. No, for 2 months, I'm going to be in the process of, if something else happens, it'll take me longer. It'll take me longer. It'll take me longer. And eventually I'll be fired. And even if I took off today with a doctor's note, I still get points. Well, the doctor said you shouldn't come into work. Too bad, sorry.
I can't imagine a worse policy from a safety perspective and from like a respecting workers' lives perspective. I mean, I think that the point you made about how, these folks want us to die for their profit is spot on. And I mean, how are you all fighting back?
We're not giving up.
Yeah.
I really truly think that since Congress and the Senate and our president have put it out there, they say, well, they deserve sick days, but we can't vote for them. You can go ahead and give us, you can keep beating us up because railroaders have a thick skin. But now you've kind of opened up Pandora's box where our country right now, for the Department of Labor standards, and they will say that 85% of Americans have sick days. What about the rest of us? So now are you going to go ahead and tell the American people that you guys can't have sick days either because it's important? Every time they talk about something that is detrimental, they talk about the impact of the economy, not the impact of the workforce. We always take the back seat. Labor is the one that always takes the brunt of everything. Labor is the one that always makes the sacrifice. Labor is the one that's being foreclosed on while the company that let them go is getting a bailout to go someplace else and start all over again because they're more important. Okay, they provide jobs. Yes, you're absolutely right. They provide jobs. I provide jobs too. I go to the Chipotle. I go to the dance studio. I go to my local barber shop. I go to my car dealership. I provide jobs too with the money that I earn. But is my money not good? Oh, it's not enough money. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. But what about the guy next to me? What about my sister next to me? What about all those other people? Their money's not important enough because we're not billionaires, billions in profits. When I took my courses recently in my labor studies degree and learning what the Form 10K is for the SEC filings for the stockholders, reading that, knowing what I know, you guys, you're not lying, but you're not telling the whole truth. And the big thing is now that I tell every union member or every activist is learn their game, go to school, learn things so you can fight their dirty battles. Because once you know how the operation works and you know how they work, there's nothing that they can go ahead and do. They can keep playing the smoke and mirrors game, but more and more, especially with our current administration, they're asking for us. They're asking for our advice. And we're able to go ahead and give the answers that they're going to give and the reality that we have. And who are you going to believe?
I love your vision of working people rising up, learning how this game is played, and winning. Can you talk a little bit about what you hope to see in the next couple of years, especially from like a labor solidarity perspective, how to lift all boats perspective?
Well, currently 10% of our country and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, currently 10% of our workforce is organized labor. That is 12.5 million members. That is a minority. That is a minority. It's plain to there. And they are always trying to crush us. And it makes me angry. I'm upset. I'm sad because I'm an American. If you don't want to have a union, that's fine. You can have your own opinion. You could have misinformation or whatever. That's your right as an American. But for a company to spend, when they're paying their workers a nickel and they're spending $1 to go ahead and tell them you don't need this, something's got to be said. We are an effective threat. I want to see more union members. I want to see more activists. I want to see us being able to tell our employer, no, you're wrong. This is what the law is. This is what our rules are. I want us to be able to come to the bargaining table. Most people that say that they do not want a union, that their company treats them well, okay, they treat you well. What about your coworker? Do they treat them well? Are you going to tell your coworker you earn $14 an hour and maybe you'll find out they earn 25? One of my coworkers, he's a union man, and his brother said, I don't like unions. I don't like unions. He worked at a non-union print shop, and the owner's son came in and had some issues. So he kicked him off his job. So he had to work nights. And then they cut the jobs off at night. And then he still does I don't need a union. Why? Why don't you need a union? You're not good as your own advocate. You didn't have any seniority. Basically, you're an at-will employee. So what's the deal? And the benefits that I have with the union, I was able to go back to school through the Union Plus free college program, which the Department of Education is taking exception to. So I'm fighting tooth and nail for that. And it's changed my life. It's literally put me in a corner where someone that could barely read and write is able to provide congressional testimony, is able to go ahead and write my senators, write these people, and not look so much like, the barely out of high school fool as they look at us. Because we're not stupid. We're not at all. Some of us, we don't have the doctorate in what they think that we should have in, but man, we can make tools. We got a doctorate making tools. We got a doctorate in railroading. We know what our job is. We're not paid for what we know. We're paid for what we can do. So, I mean, it's important, and we need to be listened to. And that's what I want to see from now on, with a company like Starbucks. I go to places where I want to spend my money. And a lot of us will go to places, for activism and stuff like that. Like they're really good in the LGBT community and all these other things and spend our money. Well, you know what? Union members do that too. On Red Cup Day, let's see how that worked out for, people coming into the store, or other days when there's a union action where we come into Starbucks and try to talk to these people. And we're specifically going in there because we're union members and we want them to be unionized. That's another group. Our money's green, just like everybody else. Let us go ahead and spend money there. Why are you fighting them? What? Because it's going to cost you an extra nickel, $1 an extra person? Come on. Raise the cup of coffee a little bit. We're not going to notice. We're still going to drink our frappuccinos.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In addition to just like increasing union membership, getting the word out about how everybody should be in a union, are there, we need paid sick leave for all. We need to increase the quality of life for workers across the board. What are your hopes for that in the next couple of years?
Well, I know it's a victory that most of my brothers and sisters will still vote on an agreement, but I will not sign an agreement personally until we all have sick leave. Every last one of us in America, because now you told me I can't have sick leave. Why don't you tell the American people they can't have sick leave? And that's what I'm going to go ahead and do, even if I have to do it on my own and not through my organization. That's what I'm going to go ahead and do and fight for it. And, we're having a rally on Tuesday, the 13th. At most of our capitals, as well as our nation's capital. So it is important that you look through Smart Union or the BLET for these actions. But this is one of the things that's going to be there. I mean, yeah, we had the agreement signed and it has been forced upon us, but we're still fighting for it. And you know what? Like I said, you've opened up Pandora's box where, you can tell us we can't have sick days. It would probably be cheaper for us to get sick days than all the American people. But, oh, well, now you're going to have to pay the bill.
Absolutely. So we're getting a bunch of questions in the chat, and I'd love to pivot to some of these questions. The first one, I think, is just a fantastic one to kick us off. How can we best support you and your fellow railroaders, Johnny? Is a question from one of our friends at NEA.
Okay, so the best things to do is go ahead and write your local representatives, your senators, your congresspeople, and stuff like that. Like I said, there's the rail rally on Tuesday, December 13th, and they're going throughout the country right now. I know there's one in Utah at the state capitol. There'll be one at Columbus at state capitol at the same time, so we can show that every time. And I appreciate you guys wanting to support us as railroad workers, but there are several labor actions happening right now. The Warrior Met miners have been on strike for 617 days. And their strike fund, the reason that they've been able to stay out this long is because of donations for the strike fund. They have not missed a benefit check. Taking the time to go to some of these meetings like labor notes or local labor clubs or even the AFL-CIO's councils and just paying attention to what they're doing. It could be the smallest thing of helping with a food drive, but really truly is staying aware of these things. And if you hold CSX, BNSF, or any of these stocks, you're a stockholder. If you go to a stockholder meeting and be like, hey, maybe we should go ahead and start treating these workers better. If you're not going to do it, maybe us, the shareholders, have to do it, just make people known.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. I especially love the start where you're at. A lot of the folks on this call today I know are union members, and there are avenues for you to get involved as a union member locally, both in your union and in solidarity activities. So I hope folks take advantage of that. Feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A. Before we get any additional questions there, Johnny, is there anything that we didn't cover today that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. Every single person on this call is one of my labor heroes. because you're standing up, you're taking time out of your day, be it paid, be it not paid, and stuff like that. You're doing something. And it's the smallest of things sometimes, but the smallest of things, the smallest of water, goes ahead and fills a bucket. And I really do appreciate it. We really do appreciate it. I mean, I get few and far between days off and stuff like that, but this was important. And, you know, as nervous as I am, I mean, it's really awesome to be able to speak to you all and thank you. Thank you for your cause. I mean, if there's anything that we can do as labor is just listening to each other and saying, no more. What do I got to do?
So appreciate you being with us today. So I'm going to go ahead and drop into the chat the link to tonight's event here in DC. Johnny, I'm so excited that you get to join us. I think it's going to be fantastic to be able to talk more with you and meet you in person. I have so appreciated our conversation today, and I think that it is going to be deeply meaningful for everybody who either watches it on YouTube or who has been able to join us. So thank you so much for your time this morning. I can't believe it's still morning. And really appreciate it. I do want to go ahead and drop into the chat as well our link to our next Zoom webinar that will be getting started soon. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that in. And Johnny, do you recommend folks follow Smart Union on Twitter, Facebook? What would be a good place for folks to hear more about the union and more about Smart TD and everything that's coming up?
Absolutely. Every single platform that we have, Facebook, Twitter, all of that. We're even on LinkedIn, which I was surprised that we're on LinkedIn. You know? And you could also follow me at Johnny Walker at Labor Recipes on Twitter and also in LinkedIn. I write what I call a labor recipe, which it's just some it's a 2-paragraph article that you can go ahead and put in your pocket for different labor things that are going on for you to go ahead and talk to people. I mean, it's a way for people to reach as many people as I possibly can to just tell them, look, these are how things are. This is how you can do it. Like today's will be about, you're disappointed. What's next? You just
love it.
Forward. So I really appreciate you guys inviting me here. This was awesome. Probably one of the highlights of my career, man.
Oh, thank you, Johnny. If you wouldn't mind, so we dropped your Twitter into the Q&A. Would you tweet out the information about the December 13th event? So that would be fantastic. So folks, go ahead and follow Johnny on Twitter for more information about that December 13th event. We're so excited that you were able to join us, Johnny, and we're excited for a lot of folks to join in solidarity with you all.
Well, I'm looking forward to tonight. Same pickle outfit, so you'll be able to spot.
Wonderful. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Y'all have a great day.
You too.